You are live with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with my good friend John Beeler. We're broadcasting from our respective home studios. We've got a really cool program for you today. We are going to have on a guest we've had on before. She is an author. She was one of the authors behind the Digital Legacy Plan. She has written a new book called You and the Internet of Things, a practical guide to understanding and integrating the Internet of Things into your daily life. This is a fantastic book if you want a primer on all the different types of technologies and digital connections that we have in our life right now. If you are feeling frustrated or kind of out of the loop on some of the things, whether that's ride sharing or Netflix, any of that, we will cover that with her during this program. She makes it super easy to understand, and it's a fantastic series of segments that we're going to do. First up, though, I want to cover some of the news, John. I guess one of the big announcements this week, Apple, they launched a new phone, which I think will do very well.
You cannot beat a less than $1,000 iPhone for brand new technology. And it sounds like it's pretty powerful. The iPhone SE is going to be about $600, 4.7 inch display with Touch ID. So it's basically an iPhone 10. Yeah, I think it's going to be very popular.
Well, the specs are interesting. They say it's modeled. It's the same shape and size as like the iPhone 8 and iPhone 7. It does actually still have the home button on it, but they've packed inside it all of the goodness of an iPhone 11. So you're going to get the same processor inside, and it even has a great camera. It's just a single lens camera, but you're going to be able to do things like portrait mode, which a lot of people love doing. Having the blurred out background.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
But what do you think, John? So I think it's $399 US in Canada here, $599, but I think this is going to be a big seller for Apple. I mean, all of these phones now seem to be, between $1,000 to $1,500. This seems to be right in the sweet spot.
Well, and I think that's the key point is the pricing too, because not everyone needs to have 4 lenses.
No.
Not enough people care about that stuff, and that's certainly an option for you to pay more for, like we did. So, but definitely for someone that's looking to upgrade an older phone or replace a broken phone, for example, this is a pretty good alternative to paying full price for one of those higher tiered phones that they have. So it's nice that they have this option, and I think it's going to be very popular.
What I'm interested though into just looking at this launch, I think it's going to be available April 24th. From my understanding, it seems like to actually launch something like this, it must mean the supply chain in China is getting back to normal for them.
Yeah, you would think so. But although, we've seen Apple in the past have supply issues too with, they got caught by surprise by how popular something is, or, the implied conspiracy theory that they're holding back inventory to make the hype machine happen. But I think in this case, I think you're right. I think it's a good indication of the fact that Foxconn and their other suppliers are able to keep up with demand. They've obviously been working on this for a while, probably even before all of the virus stuff happened. So it'll be interesting to see how well it sells and how much they make available to people to actually get, how easy it is to get.
Well, launching in about a week and a half here in Canada, selling for $599. That's the 64 gigabyte storage version, and available in white, black, and red. This next story, John, I love this. We use Zoom all the time. We're actually using Zoom right now to help record this radio show for the video podcast version, and every day in our company we have numerous Zoom meetings. There's a company now that will actually add a llama or goat to your next Zoom meeting for under $100. It's called Goat to Meeting.
Which I thought was awesome. Yeah, this is basically an animal sanctuary in California that has found a really clever way of getting some financial income during this time by making their animals available for your Zoom call or your corporate meeting on Skype, whatever you want. They will help facilitate that, and you can bring a llama or a goat or maybe even a chicken into your meeting.
Is it sad that I'm actually thinking that this would be a good idea for some of our company Zoom calls?
I think it would be an awesome idea.
Or I could just get a video background of a goat.
This is true. Or you could just put a camera on your dogs.
Hey, that's a good point. Talking about streaming now, a lot of us are watching stream shows, whether that's Netflix or Crave or Amazon Prime. Well, it looks like NBC Universal down in the US is getting into the game as well. They're going to be launching their Peacock streaming service. It'll be launching April 15th to Comcast and Flex customers. Those are cable providers down in the United States, and they will be rolling it out to cable customers, well, people that don't have that cable package either. So I think in the $10 range. It's interesting because it's just really fragmenting how we watch TV now. I mean, before on your regular cable package, it was kind of all in one. You could just kind of flip through the channels. Now, depending on what show you want, you'd have to subscribe to a different streaming provider.
Yeah, I don't think people, I mean, this is the problem we talked about before when Disney Plus came online. All of these things, people are having monthly payment fatigue, especially to watch a specific line of shows. So you're going to have to pick and choose your streaming provider based on the most content that's available that you're actually interested on those providers. And it's tough too, because, if every channel has their own streaming service, why don't you just get cable? Like
Cable's looking good right now.
it is. And we've talked about this in the past, and it's just, until we see some bundling, or at least it's interesting to see how they're rolling it out in the States where it's only on certain providers. So it's kind of like a VIP service or feature. And in some cases, we've seen these services being bundled for free from some carriers and providers as well. So, but that's also something that, is that enough to swing me to switch from, Shaw to TELUS, so I can get Crave for free? I don't know. It's one of those things that you're going to have to make a decision for yourself. And if there's enough content on Peacock when it does eventually launch in Canada, if that's something you're willing to pay for, or is it going to be falling under the Crave brand, or, who knows how they're going to roll that out?
Well, they'll be launching with 15,000 hours of current TV shows and older titles and a number of movies. Again, no word on when that's coming to Canada, but definitely will start fragmenting how we get our shows. Don't forget to visit our website, getconnectedmedia.com. We've got all sorts of great content up there, how-tos, the latest product overviews, and of course, our video and audio podcasts. We are giving away a really cool prize right now. It's a Cobra dual cam dash cam system, one for the front, one for the back of your car. This thing is awesome. It'll record everything as you're driving, so a great safety and security little tech device that you should have a look at. If you want to enter to win, just hit our newsletter section, subscribe, and you are entered to win this and every other contest going forward. When we come back from the break, we'll be talking with Vicki McLeod, the author of You and the Internet of Things. Back after this. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with John Beeler in our home studios. We've got a really interesting topic and guest coming up. There's so much happening with technology all the time. We're all connected via different networks. Of course, the internet kind of makes it all happen. So it's confusing. I get a lot of emails, a lot of friends and family asking questions all the time, how everything works together. And we have an author with us today. We've had her on before. Her name is Vicki McLeod, and you might remember her from the book, The Digital Legacy Plan. Well, she has written a new book called You and the Internet of Things, a practical guide to understanding and integrating the Internet of Things into your daily life. It's basically a book that explains everything in normal language. Vicki, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's great to be here.
Before we get into some of the good, juicy topics here, what prompted you to write this book?
I think there are really two reasons that I wanted to write the book. One is that I'm very committed to the idea that digital should be democratized. In other words, we should all have a level of digital literacy in order to just participate fully in the world. And I really noticed that there's a gap, like not all users are created equal. So all the technology is available, but we don't necessarily have the information or the knowledge that we need to be able to access it in a way that's sort of even. And the other part that really motivated me was my 80-year-old mom, who read my last book, and about halfway through the book, she peeked out over the cover of it and said, "Honey, what's a URL?" And I realized that she was halfway through a book about digital legacy without really understanding one of the very basic things about the internet. And I felt that in order for her to participate fully in the things that she wants to enjoy in life, and she may not want to have a fully networked life, but for those parts she might want to engage in, that there needed to be some form of a guide available that would explain some basics, but would also help people to face what I think is the next big sort of evolution in technology, which is the Internet of Things, the smart technology that we're finding in just about every good or gadget that we're purchasing now.
Well, I think now is as good a time as any for people to start understanding how the internet and all these digital devices work. I think a lot of us have some time on our hands. And this is an excellent book. It literally covers everything, defining what the internet is, security, privacy, the connected home, things like smart gadgets for yourself and the home, connected home entertainment, using technology for travel and leisure, smart shopping, health and fitness. It really does cover everything. Where do you start when you're explaining to people how this whole world works?
Well, I think, I started in a sense with where have we been? Like where did we start with the internet? What first got us even interested as sort of humans in playing online? And in looking back and doing some research, I realized it was really, gaming, really video consoles were the sort of start, at least, of the idea of having an in-home computer. It was IBM that famously said there would never be a need for anyone to have a home computer back in the day.
They were wrong.
But gaming obviously was, and then I think it was the advent of email. People wanted to then have access to email at home. And so we then started to adapt to computer use. And we found, of course, this wonderful, amazing world. The internet came on the scene and we were able to access information. We were able to communicate across the planet. We were able to use it as a tool for planning. And then, of course, artificial intelligence and virtual reality and those kinds of things that we're seeing now, where we have an actually smart, connected, as I say, all the goods and gadgets are, the point I kind of make in the book, and I like to make, is that even if you're not a user of a computer, like my 80-year-old mother, she is a user of things. And her choices around things are becoming to the point where she really couldn't find a dumb toaster if she wanted one. You can't buy a dumb fridge really anymore. So you have to have at least some small level of understanding of how these things work. So I sort of started with the history, then moved into where are we now, and then where do I see us going, and then back into the fundamentals. What's a router? What's broadband?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, even starting off just talking about networks, there are so many different networks and wireless technologies. It's confusing for many people. I know with my parents, they have a basic understanding, but they don't understand, there's Wi-Fi, there's cell signals, there's Bluetooth. How would you break that down?
Well, in the book, I just really tried to talk about it as radio. That the most simple way to think of it is as radio. And that's something, again, that I think the particular audience for this book, which is not your techno geek savvy audience, would understand radio and radio waves. They don't dispute that exists. They don't see it as magic, which we tend to think that that technology is magic. I make that point in the book as well. They understand how that works. So if we think about Wi-Fi in a sense as a form of radio signal, which is essentially what it is, and there are other forms of radio signals like Bluetooth, like Zigbee, like the ones I go into the book and sort of name each one. I think the main point that I make in the book for people to understand in regard to the Internet of Things is to think in ecosystems rather than thinking about because if you look at all the individual devices, they all have different properties and different technologies that they might be supported by. But if you start to look at the ecosystems of things, and I cover them top three, kind of Google, Apple, and Amazon, Alexa, then if you get things that kind of work together in an ecosystem, you're going to have a bit more success. But even that, for many people, when my mom read the book, she said, I had never realized that those were separate ecosystems. But she can understand an ecosystem.
Yes, that makes sense. It's kind of weird. You talked about the three ecosystems. What happened to Windows?
Well, I didn't really deal too much with Windows in there because my own understanding, first of all, is limited of that platform, but also there isn't as much that I could identify, at least on the consumer market side, happening in terms of that particular suite. I was sort of looking at what's available out in the world right now and what are people being faced with as a consumer, partly because honestly, there are hundreds of books about business applications for the Internet of Things and sort of the artificial intelligence and robotics in industry. But I wanted something that was going to be like you're walking into the Source or you're walking into Best Buy or any of the common stores that we might go into. What are you going to be looking at? What's going to be in front of you?
One thing I liked about it, Vicki, was the fact that the way it's explained is very approachable to anybody, regardless of their level of understanding of the technology. And I equated it to, having a coffee with you at a coffee shop and you explaining some technology to me. And in a very simple and easy to understand way, you connected all the dots to the other things. So it's very, very approachable. And I think that's something that's important for people to find. There's not a lot of places you can go to get all of those things described in that same way without having to Google a million different buzzwords.
Right, which is sort of how I wrote the book, was by Googling a million different buzzwords. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'd say the great compliment to me is that people say it's a relatively simple book, because that then means I'm actually doing the job that I set out to do as an author, which was to make something understandable and somewhat relatable for people who may feel intimidated by it. And I did a lot of interviews. I mean, I make the point in the book, we can't know everything. It's impossible, particularly when it comes to technology, and it advances and changes so quickly. But there are many, many, many professionals and helpers out there, of which I want to acknowledge. John, you were kindly allowed me to interview you for the book, particularly around safety and security, privacy concerns, which are huge. I mean, there are really some real and big concerns there for the average consumer to consider. But I really believe that you need to access the experts. Use Google, it's your friend. But if you're not comfortable using Google, then go to the source and talk to your Clayton Brown, as someone that I mentioned in the book, and I'm not trying to, I'm not endorsing the source particularly. I have no affiliation with them. But to go to your local technology store and talk to the people who work there and ask your questions, and they'll be amazingly helpful. So I didn't start out as an expert on the Internet of Things. I just really started out as someone really committed to helping to make technology understandable, and I've always been committed in my work to using it wisely and well, to be fully human in a technical world, and that's okay. You don't have to be a scientist to understand, as an ecosystem, for example.
Well, speaking of ecosystems, Vicki, you mentioned kind of the three big ones nowadays: Amazon, Apple, and Google. I think there's a lot of concern about how these ecosystems are integrating into our lives, especially with the fact that they're always listening or perhaps even always watching now. What are some privacy and security tips that you talk about to help people make these things more comfortable in their homes?
I think, the very first one is the main point that you're raising, I think, Mike, which is that people have to be aware how vulnerable they are by bringing these devices into their home. It's not fail-safe yet. I think I think it's coming. I think the industry is moving ahead and trying to address the very hackable nature of a lot of these devices. It was really in conversation with John where I learned to some degree my own awareness was raised in terms of how vulnerable I was making my own ecosystem here by introducing the Internet of Things into my private home. I highly recommend that people make sure that they create their own passwords and make them strong. And there's a little bit in the book about what makes for a good, strong password. The passwords that are given to us by the manufacturers are known. They're known by the manufacturers, and there are also websites that people can go to and actually find a list of these passwords. So if you're using the native password that came with the device, you're already vulnerable. So use your own passwords and make them strong. I went through, as I was writing the book, I went through all of my passwords and changed nearly all of them, especially in the areas where I feel vulnerable, like around my bank accounts and my business accounts and those kinds of things. Because it is actually not science fiction to say that someone could hack into a light bulb in your home and actually have access then to your entire system.
Well, that's a great point. And John, we had a conversation about this earlier this week, just talking about, these devices that we have, and we're always seeing stories that, they were hacked. For example, the Ring video doorbells, big hack. And then, you made a really good point. Is it a hack, or did you just use a really crappy password that they could easily guess, or use the default password?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vicki.
No, I was just going to say, at least let's make it harder for them. Like at least make them work for it. If they're going to invade our privacy, at least let's have them have to work hard for it.
Let's talk more about connected home entertainment. That's another chapter in your book, and you actually cover some of the basics of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, and I think right now, especially, we're seeing people have come to really rely on their home entertainment systems at the present time more than ever. And when I use the example of my 80-year-old mother, one of the things that she did recently was get Netflix, which she has been talking about for a long time because she wants to converse about what the latest shows are and, what the pop culture is talking about. But she herself hadn't signed up. So she has done that now because she wants to be able to be entertained during this time. But I really just look at the main thing I think with home entertainment that I learned through, again, writing the book, is to make sure that your system is robust enough to handle what it is you want it to do. Because we live in a time now where there are many different devices that the family members are using. Most homes now will have more than one flat screen TV. It's very rare to be a single television home anymore, which is how I grew up. We didn't have a television when I was very young. And then when we got one TV. We all watched it. We all watched Hockey Night in Canada with my dad. But now you have multi-screens happening. You have, if you have, young people in your home, they're probably gaming. So they're streaming games. If you have people everybody has their own individual phones. So if you don't have a system and infrastructure that's robust enough to support the kinds of entertainment that you want, you're going to be nothing but frustrated. You're going to be fighting over who gets to have the stream at what time of day. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing that with people using so much of their device and being on their devices so much at home.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that I get a lot of calls and emails from friends. How do I make my internet work better? Everybody in the house is trying to stream, a game or a movie or do a video chat or even school. And it just kills everything. And, there is some simple technology that you can use to help manage that. And, you don't super deep dive into that kind of stuff, but that's all like the router stuff, right? And those are kinds of things, just being aware of what's actually connected in your house. It's doing an audit of all the things that use your Wi-Fi password is kind of scary when you think about everything, from your printers to your, to your light switches.
Can you hold on 1 second? Can you hear the dogs?
Yes.
Okay. That whole train of thought, can you just pause for a second while I go kill them? Just a moment.
No dogs were harmed in the making of this episode. That's a good point. Yeah.
It's a good thing about cats. They just snore.
That's right. Although they do tend to walk across your keyboard.
She did that earlier. Yeah.
Oh, the joys of broadcasting from home. Okay. Do you mind just picking that up? I don't know if you remember where you...
So we're going toward the broadband thing. Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of, I'm seeing a lot of people contacting me asking, how do I make my internet better? Because everyone in the house is trying to, do a video call for school or for work, stream Netflix, play video games. And, most of the time this isn't a problem because everybody has their own lives and they're out and about, but now everyone's all home at the same time. And I have one friend that there's 6 people in their house and they're all trying to do the same thing with a very limited pipe of bandwidth. So being able to manage that and having that infrastructure that you mentioned, Vicki, and sort of a plan in place for, is there a specific time when you should be, doing your school stuff and everybody else should just sort of lay off the streaming, for example?
Well, and even something that this is part of the research for the book that I came to understand was even the notion of having a dual band router, for example, which terminology we're probably mostly all familiar with. And when you sign your agreement with your internet service provider, you're saying that you're getting, usually as part of your gateway, you're getting a dual band router. But you can actually assign those bands you can give those bands different names so that you can then assign your devices. So for example, when I set up my smart home, my system, I assigned, we have McLeod and then we have Smart McLeod. And Smart McLeod is where I assign. So when I'm signing up to those devices, signing them to the internet, I assign them to Smart McLeod. So they're over there on that band, on that band of the dual band router. And then I have McLeod, which is the main band for the other thing. So it's just a way of sort of managing the traffic, being like a traffic cop.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually very simple to do. Again, one of those things where I called up the internet service provider and they walked me through the steps so that I could go in and look at my all this information about my router that I never knew before.
But I mean, that's an important thing. And I think a lot of people are intimidated by it because they just don't fundamentally understand it. And I think that's a good thing about your book. If you even have like a just even a basic knowledge, I think it gives you a bit of confidence to actually go in and look at these settings. And you know, you made a good point, John, especially now we're all home and we're all having these issues. Everyone's complaining because their Zoom video call, the video sucks or it's dropping out. The kids are complaining because, you know, they're online gaming, they're lagging all the time, and that affects how well they're playing their online games. Netflix, the quality isn't good. It's because we're all using that bandwidth in our home. And Vicki, you made a great point. If you have the knowledge to know what kind of router you have and to be able to go into those settings to even just do the most basic of traffic management, it makes a huge difference.
Yes, and the people will help you. That's the thing. You don't have to necessarily know how to do that yourself. You just have to be willing to call and ask the question or go use the chat. I find the chat bots are very sophisticated now. And you do eventually get a real service agent. But they're very, very helpful and they're willing to walk you through it. And I find it's helpful. And again, I attribute this to my mom. My mom's very curious and very open-minded, and she's very willing. So to say, you know, hi, I'm 62 in my case. I'm trying to get, I understand there's 2 bands on my router. I would like to name them separately because I'm trying to set up my smart devices. And right away, they're like, of course. And they begin to discuss with you at the level to which you are able to understand. You know, they're very, very skilled. I found I was very pleased with most of the support and technical help that I got. And anyone that I interviewed for the book was really, really
That's an excellent point.
To the level.
Yeah, your internet service provider would be more than happy to help you with things like that, especially if they provide the router.
Right now, it might be a little more difficult to get that person on the phone. I must say, they're all sending out lots of, you know, self-help tips and emails right now. I'm getting lots of them. The do-it-yourself, fix your internet.
But I think knowing is half the battle. Just understanding some of the terminology, which, you know, you've covered off really well in the book, just gives people that ammunition to, like Mike said, be more confident and have those, I guess, elevated conversations to better ask the right questions. Because that's the problem that I've always found with any new technology is like, I don't know the syntax. I don't know how I should be talking about this particular thing. And putting those things in your vocabulary can only help make it easier for you to navigate that world.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was part of what I set out to do with the book was, again, to try to normalize or democratize, to create access for people to be able to use these tools if they choose. And there's absolutely no reason to get a smart toaster if your dumb one works fine for you. Like you don't have to do it, but if you choose to do it, then at least you can make a wise choice, or at least understand the choice that you might be making.
It's funny just talking about these smart appliances now. I'm happy with my dumb toaster. I'm a tech guy. Don't get me wrong. I just love technology, but sometimes it's almost too much. You know, I actually have a smart coffee maker. If I chose to do so, I could download the app and then connect with my coffee maker wirelessly and have it brew my favorite latte or coffee. But I'm just finding now it's just quicker to go to the damn coffee machine and just hit the button to make that all happen. I want to move on, Vicki, to another chapter that I think is super important right now, especially while we are all home. And if we need to buy things, we typically have to do it online. You have a whole section on smart shopping. What are some things that people should know right now?
I think first of all, I mean, if you're not already shopping online, you should know that you can shop online and that it's actually, I think, pretty safe to do so. It's one of the areas where I feel that we're not as vulnerable because most of the retailers who are online have made sure that their pay mechanisms are safe and that they are encrypted. And so you can feel pretty confident, I think, going out online to shop right now. If you are using an Internet of Things system, if you have a system like Alexa, you can actually do your shopping very simply. Alexa will keep a shopping list for you. You can actually order your things directly to Amazon through your Alexa. So that's something that a lot of people, I think, are using more now, just because we're at a time when we're needing to shop from home. One of the things I talk about in the book is sort of some of the changes in delivery that are occurring. So some people have now buildings that they live in where there are lockers downstairs that people can deliver their goods directly to the lockers that are encoded. And that's great right now, especially when we are trying to be very conscious of potential for contagion, virus borne on paper, on parcels and that kind of thing. So to take advantage of any of those services that are available to you right now, especially if you're set up for it. But I think, I've been a fairly committed online shopper, as my bank account will attest. Anyway, but I do think this is a great time. If you haven't begun doing it, start doing it now. And especially for those people who are older, who are afraid of going out. to be able to get your groceries online. It's taking a bit longer than it was taking before we went into the circumstances we're in now, but you can get mostly whatever you need delivered within 3 or 4 days, which is really quite amazing.
But again, I know a lot of older folks, and I even look at my parents, and I think the thought of trying to order groceries online would just put them over the edge. Is there a way for them to get in simply? Maybe just set up an account and order some simple things just to
that's great advice. I always, my whole thing is about making it easy and doing what you need to do. There's a lot of things we could do. I mean, it could be overwhelming if you think of all the things you could do, but to just start with what you need most. If groceries are your biggest need, then start by setting up your account. If you need help setting up your account, many of the grocers will actually help you do that. You can phone them and say, could you help me set up my online account? They will help you do it. Or get your favorite son-in-law or son or daughter, if you're that person. I partly wrote the book for that person that is in the position of having to support older family members, or perhaps they're helping younger people get onto technology. But get that account set up and then try it out. Try doing a few things, other things, especially right now, that are more essential to you.
Moving on, another chapter in your book, Vicki, and again, we're talking about the book you've just recently written, You and the Internet of Things, A Practical Guide to Understanding and Integrating the Internet of Things into Your Daily Life, is the whole idea of fitness and health. And I think right now, this is a big thing. A lot of people can't go to see their doctor, and telemedicine is a big thing. And when I say telemedicine, it's video chatting with a doctor, and you cover that as well.
This is, again, I wasn't prescient when I wrote the book at all. I was trying to say, okay, here's what's coming and what I see happening. I had no idea the uptake of and importance that digital medicine would have. And now it's more important than ever, because people are, especially when we're fearful that we might be ill with something potentially life-threatening. So to be able to actually have a FaceTime with a medical professional who is going to quickly analyze your symptoms. I just, as a test, when I was writing the book, decided to sign up for one of the telemedicine services here in British Columbia. And it was a seamless experience. It was as easier than going to my regular family doctor. First of all, I did not have to travel. I did not have to get out of my sweatpants. I was able to discuss my, which even then I was wearing them. I was ahead in that trend as well. But just to see now how important it's become, we're also seeing, which I didn't write about in the book, but would love to in another iteration, the impact of robotics, how they're using robotics, particularly in Italy, as bedside and analysis with patients who are hospitalized. So there's so much happening there. And it started really, the interesting thing, again, when you look back at how these things started, consumers have actually driven digital medicine more so than medicine has driven it. Consumers, with things like Fitbits, with our fascination with knowing our heart rate, understanding our bodies, we started to adapt to the technology first. And then sort of the medical industry sort of went, oh, wait a minute, this is something we can use too. And the sort of two things have come together in what we're now calling digital medicine. I think it's a really exciting frontier, and it's one that I think we're going to see a much bigger uptake of as a result of being forced to use it now than we might have seen had we not had this particular set of circumstances.
I think it's an important topic in your book. I keep using my parents as the examples here.
They're the ideal readers. I hope you're going to get them a couple of copies.
I certainly am. This will be perfect. My mom will love it. We got her a Fitbit last year, and I was a little worried, to be honest, because, the Fitbit, you're supposed to connect it with your smartphone, and, it'll download all that information into the smartphone app, and you can see what's going on. And, it actually worked out way better than I thought. She never goes into the app ever. I don't even think she knows where that app is on her phone. But because the Fitbit I got her has the readout right on the unit itself, she can, at an instant, anytime during the day, just see how many calories she's burned. Probably the most important thing, how many steps and how far she's walked.
Yeah.
And that motivates her to actually get more exercise and walk more. She sets these daily goals of how much she wants to walk. And because she can see that in an instant right on her wrist, I think it's changed her life, and I feel makes her healthier as well. So
absolutely,
you don't have to be scared with these devices. They can be as simple or as complex as you want.
Yes, exactly. And I think it is that to find the things that we find engaging and exciting and useful. So for your mom, that's really useful. My mom, similarly, she had never measured her steps before. So when we were on a vacation together in Hawaii, and I showed her how she could measure her steps on her smartphone, and she's walking more because now she's looking to see how many steps did I get today. Before she didn't care.
Yeah.
But it's like she's in competition with herself and she wants to know. And so that's really useful. And it also has this benefit, this beneficial effect. So, for me, I sort of have, like many people do, a love-hate relationship with technology. It's really changed my world. I mean, I was an analog person for more than half of my life, but I can see the benefit and the beneficial effect on my life and on the lives of my family members. Then of course I'm going to want to adapt to it. I just want to know how.
And finally, I want to talk about, you've got a whole section in your book on smart transportation. And I mean, there's a lot to cover there, obviously. I think the big thing for a lot of folks would happen to come into the whole ride hailing aspect, using services like Uber and Lyft. And again, I think it's intimidating for a lot of people because they might not be as comfortable with their smartphone and using the different apps and getting into the Uber app. But again, you actually talk about that in the book as well to help them understand.
Right. And again, it's just about being able to access what are the services that would be most useful. I mean, I think this is another area that's going to maybe change and evolve even more so. Lots of geographies don't yet have those services or are just now getting them, and they're not being used a lot at the present time. But again, we can have that app. It's super simple. It's seamless. You can book, pay, do the whole thing with a simple tap. For people, people who don't drive, people who have mobility issues, there's so much happening right now in terms of what's available to you for transportation. Never mind getting to the whole driverless cars. We know that, I'm trying to think, I can't remember the geography where this is happening, but they're using driverless cars now to deliver COVID tests, right? Testing stations, because there's no people involved. So again, here's another application on the sort of medical and transportation side of this smart technology. There's just a lot of exciting things going on in that area.
Well, I'm excited about it because I want my parents to have the confidence to be able to order an Uber. But again, it just comes down to the confidence level. Of course, help them set up the whole account, attach it to their credit card and what have you. But once that's done, if they just try it a few times and get that confidence, it's life-changing. Instead of having to take expensive taxis or wait for buses, it's another option for transportation, and gives them definitely a lot more freedom. And plus, it's not just an app on your smartphone. You can tie these into the digital voice assistants as well, like your Google Home or your Amazon Alexa device. We've been, as I set off all my...
I'm not sure if that's mine or yours.
No, that's mine. I'm setting off all the Amazon devices in my house right now.
Yeah.
We're talking with Vicki McLeod. She is the author of a new book. It is a must-have. It literally covers everything about being connected and the internet. It's called You and the Internet of Things, a practical guide to understanding and integrating the Internet of Things into your daily life. Vicki, where can people actually get this book?
So as we know, bookstores right now are not necessarily your best option, although many are doing a drop-off service. So you can order it online for sure. It is being delivered. I know people are getting the book. You can get a digital version of the book as well to your Kindle or whatever reading app that you use. You can visit my website, vickymcleod.com. You can get books directly from myself and from my publisher, Self Counsel Press. They have stock and will mail. So the book is available and it is out. It launched on April 2nd.
Very cool.
Bookstores worldwide, or the notion of bookstores worldwide.
Is it available on Amazon?
Pardon me?
Available on Amazon?
It is available on Amazon, yes.
Perfect. Again, the book title is You and the Internet of Things, a practical guide to understanding and integrating the Internet of Things into your daily life. This covers everything with connected technology and really helps make it easy to digest and understand, and hopefully give a bit of confidence on some of these things. I'm a tech guy myself. I don't know everything. I have to read and continually keep up with stuff. So these types of guides are invaluable. And, if you've got some people in your life that, are maybe a little confused or a little apprehensive about some of the technologies that are happening right now, this is a fantastic gift. It's a must-have. Again, You and the Internet of Things, a practical guide to understanding and integrating the Internet of Things into your daily life. Vicki, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for your kind words about the book. Much appreciate it.
You're back with Get Connected. Mike and John here. Been a great show, and again, I really recommend you check out Vicki's book if you want to get more up to speed on all the tech happening, and it really will help you keep more connected. And I think that's an important thing right now as we are all self-isolating. These tools are pretty simple to use, and it's a great way to reach out to those that are even more isolated than others, and help them out and get them going. Don't forget to check out our contest. John, we're giving away a cool prize.
Very cool prize.
It's a Cobra dual cam HD system, dash cam system, and this is something you hook up in your car. It's got a front camera, a back camera. It records everything, whether you're driving or it's sitting in your driveway or grocery store parking lot. It'll record everything. If you want to enter, just hit our website, GetConnectedMedia.com. Go to the newsletter tab and subscribe to our newsletter, and you are entered to win not only this prize, but all the different contests we have going on this year. That's all the time we have left. I want to thank everyone that helps put the show together. Of course, John, my wonderful co-host, also Stephen, Christina, AJ, Paul, and the rest of the gang. We'll see you again next time.